Okay, in this tech tip video, what we're going to be looking at and what we're going to be modifying is the bolt that holds the Shockwave AR pistol brace onto the Shockwave buffer tube. Now you can see what we're looking at right here is a AR pistol that I just recently built. I carry this in a Blackhawk diversion carry bag, which is basically designed for SBRs and AR types of pistols that are fairly short, 26, 27, 28 inches in length. In this configuration, as the pistol sits right here, the pistol will fit in my Blackhawk diversion carry bag just fine. So I have to have the stock completely collapsed for it to fit. The problem is that once I take it out of the bag, I have to adjust the pistol brace. I have to loosen up the bolt that holds it in place and extend the pistol brace so that it'll brace correctly against my forearm. And to do that, that requires me taking out a hex key that I keep in the grip of this particular pistol, and loosening up this bolt that's just right here and sliding this back and finding the right position, and then tightening it up, and then taking this and putting it back in the grip of the pistol. Also, this by itself in the grip jiggles around and is quite annoying, so I actually wrap it in a paper towel and stick it in the pistol grip. So before we get much into this modification, if you are using a pistol brace and you're carrying your AR pistol in a larger bag, and you can set the length of your brace and you don't have to adjust it every time you take it out of your bag, then this modification that I'm going to talk about you may not need to do. So don't waste your time watching this if that's the case. This is specifically geared towards anybody who might be using a Shockwave pistol brace on their AR pistol, and they're trying to carry their AR pistol in a shortened or discrete carry type of bag, and they need to adjust the length of pull on their pistol brace every time they take it out of their bag. So I find it very inconvenient to have to break out a tool and loosen up this pistol brace every single time. And I always thought it was kind of strange that there wasn't a quick QD type, a quick detach type of bolt for the Shockwave. The Shockwave bolt is recessed in this opening. It's not something that's readily accessible with your fingers. You have to use a tool. And from my research, there's no legal requirement for the bolt to require a tool or to be recessed and not accessible by your fingers. Now, if some of you that are watching this video know other than that, feel free to leave me a comment, but my research has indicated that there's nothing preventing you from changing this bolt to something that you can access with just your fingers. And on that topic, I did do some searches, and there are a few innovative companies out there that are providing a replacement bolt for the Shockwave brace that you can access with your hands, which is great. I'm absolutely glad that some people are providing those types of products to the market. But for a simple bolt, $15 for a simple bolt is a little bit ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's that's like Mercedes-Benz pricing. When I go to the Mercedes dealer to buy, I lost a screw, I need a screw, $15. It's just a screw, or it's just a bolt. Now, mind you, yes, the Shockwave bolt is a little bit customized, but there's a way around this, and I'm going to show you that. So let me go ahead and I'll remove this and get the AR pistol off the table here, and let's take a look at the Shockwave brace and the bolt, and we'll go from there. Okay, with our Shockwave brace removed and our bolt removed, you can see this bolt is it's about 1 inch long. It's basically a hex head bolt, and it has a pointed tip on it. And the pointed tip is necessary to help this bolt seat into dimples that are on the CAC Shockwave buffer tube, the one that's made specifically for use with this brace, which will basically show you this in case you don't know what that looks like. You can see that there's small dimples in the bottom of the specific Shockwave brace buffer tube, and that's for this specific bolt. So if we're going to replace the bolt, we've got to look at the threads of this particular bolt right here. The threads are a 5/16 by 18. All right, and so once we know that, we can find something that is compatible that will thread into the recess right there. Now what I did was I went down to Lowe's and I went to Home Depot, and I just took a look through. You know, if you go into their bolt and their screw section, they have a lot of different things. You'll need to look for a 5/16 by 18. There wasn't a lot available that would be suitable for this type of modification. I did find one, and they were available in 1.25 inch length and 2.0 inch length. So a 1 1/4 and a 2 inch length. I went ahead and bought this one. See, this is made by Hillman. This cost a little over $1. It's a 1.5 inch. It's referred to as a thumb screw. You can see basically all the information on here. Hillman H8, or it's an H number 880957, and then basically that's all the information that's on the back. So this costs a little bit more than $1, and you can see it is substantially longer because it's 1.5 inches, but it does have a little grip on it right down here, so you can hand tighten this bolt. So that's more or less exactly what I was looking for. There wasn't a lot of other options. There were some other options with some really large knobs on it, which were just not what I was really looking for. And this does thread on here perfectly and tighten down the way it should. The big issue is it's too long. So what I'm going to have to do is shorten this, and I'm going to have to shorten it so when I tighten this down, I want it to get tight right there. That's how I want it. I want it to be as flush as possible once it's nice and tight. And obviously it's way too long for that particular purpose. So first thing we're going to do here, we've just test fitted this, so we know the threads are good. We're going to go ahead and take this off, and we're going to I'm going to go ahead and put this back on the pistol, and we're going to tighten this down and basically see where it fits on the pistol brace buffer tube. Okay, with the brace put back on the buffer tube and this Hillman thumb screw tightened down, you can see when it actually gets tight, it's at not the angle I'm looking for, and there's an awful lot of thread left over right there, which, you know, in reality, that really isn't going to be in the way. This is probably not the angle that I really want, because it does kind of stick out, and when you're using this as a brace and you have your arm up here, this might dig into your arm. That's what I'm thinking. So I definitely want it. I want it to be orientated this way, and I want to get rid of some of that excess slack right there. Now, getting rid of the excess slack, you can either elect to do that or not do that, but one of the things we're going to have to do, we're going to need a Dremel with a grinding wheel or a bench grinder, because we're going to take off some of the length right here, and I'm going to basically grind the tip down so we have somewhat of a point. So this will recess into the CAC Shockwave buffer tube. I'm going to do that off camera. That's not real rocket science. Whether you're using a Dremel, you know, you could cut this and then use a hand file if you wanted. I'm just going to take it to a bench grinder for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and shorten it and then try and put a tip on it. And then we'll come back and we'll take a look at what I have, and we'll test fit it, and we'll see how well it goes. Okay, after about 10 minutes on a bench grinder and another 5 minutes with a hand file. Basically, I use the hand file to fine-tune the tip a little bit. I shaped it on the bench grinder, and then used the hand file to make sure that the tip was came to a fairly sharp point. One thing to note when you're doing this is definitely be cautious about your threads. There's two things you could do. If you had a nut that was of the same pitch, you know, a 5/16 by 18 nut, you could screw a nut down here, and then after you get done grinding the tip, you could back the nut off and use the nut to clean up the threads. Same kind of concept that you would use like a die for to clean up the threads. I didn't have too much of the issue with the threads, but I do have a very fine jeweler's file that I use to do a little bit of touch-up work on the threads, because if you're not careful about the threads, you won't be able to get this to thread into the Shockwave. Now, the other thing to note is the threaded nut that's inside the Shockwave brace is brass. So the one thing you don't want to do is cross thread something, because you'll just tear up the inside of a brass threaded nut. So something to note. The length I ended up with is about 1 1/8 inch, and that's right out to the very tip. And I did this off screen. I did this and it was a little bit longer, so I went back in and I shaved the tip down a little bit. So I ended up with 1 1/8 inch on the tip. So let's go ahead and test fit this, and let's see how this fits. Let's go ahead and put our brace back on, and use a flashlight to make sure the brace is lined up with one of the holes. Okay, that looks good right where it is. And let's go ahead and tighten this down. Now, I did already test fit this off camera, or I test fitted the bolt into the brace, because the first time around the threads weren't going into the brass insert. So I went back, I took it out and took my jeweler's file and just cleaned up the threads a little bit. And there we go. Tightened it down, and you can see I ended up pretty much with the angle I wanted. It's not 100%. Well, it's not 100% parallel with this line right here, but it's close enough to where it's not. When I grip the pistol, it's not going to dig into my arm. So I can't actually show that too well on the display table. But that's basically it. You can see it's nice and tight, and we have no movement. I guess it would help if it was in frame. It is, well, let me reposition the camera and we'll take a look at this again. Okay, you should be able to see that a little bit better. You can basically see that I've got this thumb screw bolt pretty much all the way up flush, and it is fairly parallel right there. You can see it's off a little bit, but that's about as close as I could get it. I had to do a little bit of extra trimming. So all in all, 15-20 minutes worth of some grinding and some filing to get that to fit. The stock is solid and doesn't move around, and the nut is kind of tight. So the other thing is, I don't particularly like the silver finish of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take that out, and we're going to put a little bit of black on it, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, what I've got, I have this Birchwood Casey super black touch-up pen in flat black. I did a review on this previously. I use this for touching up firearm parts. It's basically paint in a pen, and you shake it up, and you've got a little tip that you can depress and get paint flowing. And I'm going to use that just to paint the thumb grip of this, because I don't particularly like the silver. So we just push down on this to get some paint flowing. You could spray paint this if you had some Krylon or something like that. I'm just going to go ahead and put a light coat on this. I'm going to let it dry, and I'm going to do it again and build it up till it's nice and solid. And we'll be back and we'll take a look at the finished product. Okay, just applied a little bit of the flat black touch of paint to the head. I didn't put any paint on the threads. You probably don't want to do that, and then you might run into issues with the bolt actually threading into the brass female part. So I just put it on the head and let it dry. One last note about taking this to a bench grinder. If you're going to use a bench grinder to trim down the size and shape the head, absolutely wear some eye protection and wear some heavy gloves. Also have a little cup of water handy to dip the bolt in to cool it down, because it will heat up extremely fast, making it impossible to hold on to without gloves, and the water will also keep the metal cool. So now that we've got that painted, one last test fit. And there we go. So for a little over $1, you've got yourself an easy fix that gives you quick adjustability of your Shockwave brace, so you can appropriately adjust the length of pull to fit your arm, especially if you're using smaller carry cases like I am. So that's going to wrap up this particular tech tip on how to make a quick detach bolt for your Shockwave brace.